speak to us about the necessity to control things that happen to us. To what extent should we aim to control them? Planning them, predicting them, preventing them, enforcing them. To what extent should we aim to control these things that happen in our life, both long-term and on a daily basis? There's a paradox between the fact that A, we don't have any control over what happens to us, and our very serious responsibility, our duty, to make sure that that which happens is in line with our spiritual path. And so let's look at that paradox for a moment. Because when we have a question of to what extent should we control the things that happen to us, well, obviously the very first answer is you can't control what happens to you. So to the extent that you're going to try is the extent to which you're beating your head into a wall. The only control you have over what happens to you is the control that you have over the seeds that you plant. So for example, if you have an orange tree growing in your garden, it means that at some point in your past, you've planted an orange seed. You have an apple tree growing. At some point you planted an apple seed. You have weeds growing in your garden. It means you haven't been weeding your garden. That's the extent to which we have the control, is what seeds are we planting and how are we nourishing and nurturing them. But actually what sprouts, actually what comes out of that tree is not in our hands, it's in God's hands. Truth is, we couldn't make a seed sprout anyway. If somebody stuck a seed in your hand and said, okay, this is up to you, sprout it. We don't have the power to do that. God is the one. And I say God just as a term that seems to be something most people are comfortable with. But when people come in frequently who are not comfortable with that term, don't worry. Whatever concept works for you, the divine, God, spirit, the universe, energy, whatever concept works for you, that's fine. So that divinity is what puts the apples in the seed, what puts the oranges in the seed. We don't do that. Best we do is we take this tiny little thing that looks like a speck, but somebody told us it was a seed. We stick it in the dirt, and the rest is in the divine's hands. So this is important because when it sprouts and we get wonderful fruit, all is good. But when it doesn't sprout, or when it sprouts and gives us fruit that wasn't what we had wanted. We thought we planted an orange seed. Turns out we planted an apple seed. Now we're miserable. This is where it's important to remember the really fundamental teaching from the Bhagavad Gita, which is not to be attached to the fruits of your actions. This is really the core teaching that Lord Krishna gives in the Gita. Plant your seeds, water them, plant them in the right soil, water them the right way, get the right amount of sun to shine on them, so plant them in the right place. This all comes under the umbrella of do your duty. And he's very clear. Don't do it half-heartedly. Don't do it halfway. Don't do it wishing you were somewhere else. That instead of being a gardener, you wish you were a carpenter. do it fully, but then recognize that what comes out of that seed is not in your hands. It's in the divine's hands. So we cannot control what happens to us in that way. You plan a wedding. It's the dry season. Everyone says to you, it never rains. It hasn't rained this time of year in 50 years. There is no possibility it will rain. So you plan a beautiful outdoor wedding, a very light fabric, covering, nothing too heavy, and it pours. Now, that wasn't in your hands, obviously. How could you control that? But this is life. This is what being on the planet is. It rains on our wedding sometimes. Fruit comes out of a tree that wasn't what we thought it was going to be. Or nothing comes out. Nothing sprouts at all. My favorite story on this that those of you who have been coming for a while will recognize, but I'll tell it again for new people, is my story of my kitchen garden when I lived in San Francisco. Because before moving to San Francisco, I had lived in Palo Alto, which was a very suburban place, and we had had a house, and I'd had a backyard, and grew basil and other herbs in the backyard. And when we moved to San Francisco, no longer had a backyard, but I had a kitchen windowsill garden with some pots. And again, I planted basil and other herbs. And I'd leave in the morning and I'd come back in the evening, and the herbs just didn't sprout. Day after day, nothing, not even a little shoot, nothing at all. And in the beginning I thought, well, all right, the seeds must have been bad. And I went and I bought new seeds, and the expensive kind, the organic kind, the good kind, and planted them. My neighbors are growing, so we're clearly getting the right amount of sun. Nothing. Days go by, weeks go by, not a sprout. I replant these at least 2-3 times. And even though it's something small, it starts to grate on you. I can't even do this. And I was a student at the time. I was getting a PhD. And so when you're already under the pressure of performing, and every day you're already showing up in a situation where it's like, I don't know this, and I don't know that, and I haven't read this, and oh my God, that. And now I can't even grow basil. Now my seeds won't even sprout. So one afternoon I come home and I see our cat is in the pots. He was an indoor-outdoor cat whom I had left out of the equation in wondering what was happening to my seeds. And I had forgotten that when we lived in Palo Alto, when we shifted to San Francisco, that at the same time, a friend of mine who had a cat was moving. He couldn't take his cat. He asked me if we would adopt his cat. I said, sure. But I had left that adoption of Bill the cat out of the equation. And I look out the window, and there is Bill the cat in my pots, literally, tossing the dirt all over the place. Well, so obviously the seeds weren't going to sprout. The seeds weren't even in the dirt anymore. The seeds were down below somewhere. So we do our best. But sometimes the universe has other plans. And it's not because we're being punished. It's not because we're bad people. But sometimes there's karmic packages that we don't take into consideration. Like I had not taken Bill the cat's karmic package into consideration. When looking at my herbs, I had forgotten. Oh yeah, cat. Indoor, outdoor. Cats like dirt. Wasn't much dirt where we lived, in the middle of the city, but there was a lot of dirt in the pots. And so we can't control those things. So don't try to exert control over them, because then you're just frustrated. And especially don't try to exert control over the people around you. That's the most dangerous thing we do. Dangerous for ourselves and dangerous for our relationships. The closer you get to someone, the more we start wanting to control them. Very few people try to control, just the guy who pumps their gas or somebody who lives down the block, unless they happen to have really loud parties really frequently. But otherwise, whatever they do, fine, let them do it. It tends to be the people around us, our family members, our friends, but more our family members, our spouses, our children, our employees, our colleagues. We have this agenda of how they should behave, how they should be, how they should speak, how they should act. And my happiness is dependent upon that. And the more I try to control it, the more miserable I get. Because remember, everybody's got their own karmic package they've come into the world with. And they're not going to adapt their karmic package because you've told them to. They may try. We try to be nice to others. But what you end up getting at the very best case scenario, you get what we call behavior modification, which means you shout every day at your husband or at your children for not helping you do the dishes. Eventually, they'll help you do the dishes. Best case scenario. But if you go deeper, what you realize is, I wasn't really in this for the behavior modification. It wasn't really about the dishes. It wasn't really about those 10 minutes that it takes me. What it was about was the message that them not helping me gave me, which was, I'm not respected, that I'm the family maid, that what everybody else has to do is more important than what I have to do. I mean, all of the stuff that we tell ourselves. Everybody else just gets up from the table and leaves their dirty dishes, and it's all up to me. And what that means is, you don't respect me. My time isn't valuable to you. Whatever story we are telling ourselves. Because that's what we do. We tell ourselves a story. All they did was leave their dishes on the table. But I've written a whole story about it that's very deep and very long. And it has everything to do with the depths of our relationship. This is the core of the problem. You don't respect me. Hey, I just left my dish on the table. So you get angry enough times, they absolutely will start bringing their dishes in and even doing the dishes. But it's not going to make them respect you more. It's not going to treat the core issue that actually you were upset about to begin with. And that you can't control. You cannot beat someone, push someone, squeeze someone into respecting you, loving you, wanting you. The best that you'll get is this behavior modification. Oh yeah, better do the dishes or mom will have a fit. But the more we try to control the people around us, the more miserable we get. And this is where the core spiritual teachings are: control yourself. Instead of worrying about what the outside world is doing, control your reaction to it. That's all that's in your hands. They don't do the dishes. They leave their plates on the table. Fine. Part one of this story is over. Curtain has fallen. Now the curtain is rising on Act 2. You are the star of Act 2. What do? We have a couple of options. Option 1, you do the dishes. Option 2, you throw a fit. Option 3, neither. You figure, let them show up in the morning for breakfast and see the dirty dishes. They'll learn eventually. I mean, we could get creative. There's a whole lot of options we could work through. But there's only one of them that's actually going to let you sleep peacefully that night. And that option is simply doing them. But not doing them grudgingly, not doing them while you're doing them thinking, my God, I can't believe I'm stuck in this family where nobody respects me. Can't believe I'm the one who always has to do it. But doing them, and as you do them, marvel at the water, the way the water feels on your hands. My God, water. Think about all the people in the world who don't have water. And here we have enough to just let it flow. Notice the beautiful way the suds come up. Right? They're actually really beautiful. I mean, we lie on our backs and we gaze at the clouds. But doing the dishes is a chore. Well, actually what the suds look like is very similar to what clouds look like, if you've ever looked carefully at them. Do them with a spirit of, this too is part of my spiritual practice. Otherwise, what ends up happening is I become miserable. Or I commit myself, kuch bhi ho jaye, I'm going to make them do the dishes. I'm tired of always being the one. I always get the, slave labor stuff to do. Everybody else is enjoying, look, they're watching the ball game, they're doing this, they're reading a book, whatever it may be. But that's all in our own perspective. And so out of all the options, what I have to say to myself is it more important to me to sleep well tonight? Or is it more important to me to have 7 extra minutes in my day? Because you know what? In all the fits I'm going to throw to get them to come and do the dishes, that's going to steal a lot more than 7 minutes of my sleep. Whether it's in the fighting in the relationship, whether it's in the way that my brain is going when I lie down to go to sleep. Why don't I feel satisfied? They did it, but they only did it because I pushed them to do it. It's not good enough. So trying to control other people is walking yourself into a black hole. Control yourself, your reactions. How can I make everything an opportunity? What an opportunity. I get to play with water. Amazing. And I can make it any temperature I want. Look at that. More cold, more hot. I mean, amazing. How many people in the world have that opportunity? Very few. We take it for granted. But a tiny percentage of the people in the world have water on tap. What an opportunity. What an opportunity to even have had a meal that there are dishes to clean up from. Can I spend the 7 minutes of doing the dishes reliving my gratitude for the meal that we just had? That's up to me. That control I have. So with regard to our life, planning, thinking, absolutely do it. Puja Swamiji always says, failing to plan is planning to fail. So we have to plan. If I'm going to plant a seed, I better know how much space this tree is going to need. So I plant it in such a way that there's enough room for its roots. Is this a shade-loving tree, a sun-loving tree? That I don't plant it too close to the house such that the roots grow and uproot my house? You have to plan properly. But once I plan and move forward with that, sincerely, that's the other aspect. We have to do it with sincerity, with the fullness of our being. This is the do your duty. Do your work. If something is there's a term in Hindi we talk about swakarma. Swakarma means my karma. Like, no, I can't pay somebody to do it for me. No, I can't wait for the next guy to come along. This is work that has been given to me. This is my swakarma. And a lot of the frustration that we feel is because we procrastinate things. That's going to be too annoying. That's going to be too difficult. That's going to take up too much of my time. I don't like doing that. But it weighs on us. If it's our swakarma, it weighs on us. And it sits on our head. And then we try to push it away, but it stays because it's our karma. And swakarma doesn't necessarily mean big things. Very frequently it's little things. Tasks we have to do, responsibilities we have to fulfill, duties that are ours. But when we don't do them, it weighs on us. And so we have to do our duty with sincerity, with planning, with proper execution, but with an awareness that I actually have no control over the results. So I have researched where this tree grows. I have planted it in the right place. I have watered it the right way. But if while I'm at school my cat is coming and throwing this dirt all over the place, that was out of my hands. If an early monsoon comes and hailstorms rain down on our crops, as tragically keeps happening in this country, to the devastation of farmers, that's out of their control. They're doing their best. And that's all we can control. And then, when you don't end up with your basil, because your cat has thrown the seeds all over the place, or the hailstorms have come down and ruined your crop, that's when we turn that control inward. How do I control my reaction to that? Because now that's all that's in my hands. I have no basil, I have no crops. But what I do have is myself. I do have my awakening. I do have my opening. I have my growth. And now that's what I need to control. And that's the opportunity that's given to us.